All right, you ready? Tonight I'm bringing you two disturbing Reddit posts that honestly kept me up. Drop a like and subscribe if you want more. Let's get into it. DoorDash driver delivered to the wrong door, then refused to leave my floor for over 30 minutes. It started with a wrong door. I'm a freelance writer and I live alone in a fourth-floor walk-up apartment in the city. My building is old. No elevator, no doorman, just a main entrance that's supposed to stay locked but doesn't half the time. Last Tuesday night, I was working late on a deadline and ordered DoorDash around 10 p.m. Just pad thai and spring rolls from my usual place. The knock came about 30 minutes later, but not at my door. I heard it clearly at Unit 4B, directly across the hall from me, which has been sitting empty for at least 3 weeks. I opened my door and found the driver standing there with my bag, staring at his phone. He glanced up when he heard me, made brief eye contact, and handed over the food without saying a word. That should have been it, but he didn't leave. Instead, he sat down right there in the hallway, back against the wall directly across from my door, and went back to scrolling on his phone. I took my food inside, figuring he must have another pickup in the building. It happens. But then 20 minutes went by. Then 30. I could hear him out there the entire time. Occasional cough, the tap-tap of his screen, his jacket rustling when he shifted position. It was starting to unnerve me. I checked the DoorDash app to see if there were actually other orders nearby. There weren't. No active deliveries in my building, not even on my street. I didn't want to open my door again while he was still sitting there. Something felt wrong. Just after 11 p.m., I finally heard him stand up and head down the stairs. I waited another few minutes, then checked through the peephole. Empty hallway. I locked my door, double-checked the deadbolt, and went to bed. The next morning, there was a photo on the floor just inside my door. Someone had slipped it underneath while I slept. It was me. Sitting at my desk right by the window, my face lit by the glow of my laptop. Taken from street level with a zoom lens, the angle unmistakable. You could see everything. My expression, the mug on my desk, the books on the shelf behind me. There was a timestamp printed in the corner. 3 days before that delivery ever happened. He had known exactly where she lived before he ever knocked. The surveillance had been methodical. I held that photo in my hands for maybe 10 minutes before I could move. The detail was what got me. You could see the title of the book I was reading on my desk, the crack in my coffee mug, the exact expression on my face when I was deep in work. Someone had stood on the street below my window with a camera and a zoom lens and taken their time composing this shot. 3 days before he ever knocked on my door. The angle was from across the street, slightly elevated, probably from a parked car or standing on the opposite sidewalk. My desk sits right against the window because I like the natural light. I never thought about what that meant. How exposed I was every single night I sat there working with the curtains open and the lights on. I called the police non-emergency line around noon. 2 officers showed up an hour later, a woman in her 40s and a younger guy who took notes while she asked questions. They bagged the photo as evidence and checked the hallway, the stairwell, the building entrance. The female officer told me plainly that this looked like a stalking pattern, deliberate and escalating. She said the delivery was likely a pretext to confirm the address and get a closer look at me in person. That's when it all clicked. The driver sitting in my hallway for 30 minutes wasn't waiting for another order. He was watching, confirming, maybe even listening to see if I lived alone. Every time I'd heard him shift or cough through my door, he'd been sitting right there, 5 feet away, with full view of my apartment entrance. I spent the rest of the day checking locks, the deadbolt, the chain, the window latches. I went through every drawer and closet looking for anything else that might have been left behind. I pulled my curtains shut and haven't opened them since. I pushed my bookshelf against the door that night and barely slept. Every sound in the building made my heart race. The worst part is knowing I've been watched for days without realizing it. How many times had he been down there on the street looking up at my window before he finally made his move? She couldn't unsee it now. She needed to know if anyone else had experienced this. I'm writing this from r/let's not meet because I need people to understand how these delivery apps can be weaponized. After the police left yesterday, I went through the DoorDash app trying to find information about the driver. His account was barely a month old with only 6 reviews, all generic 5-star ratings posted within the same week. No profile photo, just the default silhouette. The name looked fake too, something generic like David M. that could belong to anyone. I filed a report through the app, but got an automated response about their investigation process taking 3 to 5 business days. That's when I started researching and realized how easy it is to exploit these platforms for building access. Anyone can sign up as a driver with minimal vetting. Once you're active, you have a legitimate reason to enter secured apartment buildings, ride elevators, walk through hallways, knock on doors. You're expected to be there. Residents see the uniform or the food bag and don't question it. The worst part is understanding that he used this system specifically to get to me. He didn't just randomly target my building. He already had that photo from 3 days earlier. He knew exactly which unit was mine. The delivery was never about bringing food. It was about confirming I lived alone, getting a closer look, maybe even listening through my door to learn my routine. These platforms that are supposed to make our lives more convenient have become surveillance tools for anyone willing to abuse them. I've stopped ordering delivery entirely. I don't trust who might show up at my door anymore. This is absolutely terrifying. Please tell me you filed a police report and contacted DoorDash Corporate, not just their regular support line. I would honestly consider moving. If he has your address, your name, and photos of you through your window, he's been watching for longer than you realize. I've been dashing for 3 years, and there is zero reason to wait in a hallway like that. We can see all our orders in advance. He was lying. That's what made me check the app in the first place. I waited about 10 minutes before I looked, thinking maybe he was telling the truth. But the app showed he'd already been marked offline for 20 minutes. He wasn't waiting for an order. I don't know what he was doing out there, but it wasn't work. The account breach came next. Someone used my account to place another order last night. I woke up this morning to a DoorDash notification on my phone for an order I never placed. Breakfast burrito and coffee from a place I've never ordered from, delivery address set to my apartment, charged to my saved payment method. When I checked the account activity, it showed the login came from a different device in a part of the city I've never been to. I immediately started changing passwords and enabling 2-factor authentication on everything, but while I was doing that, I went back through my order history and opened the delivery confirmation photo from the original Tuesday night order. That's when I saw it. The photo the driver uploaded to prove delivery showed the food sitting on the floor outside Unit 4B, the empty apartment across the hall. But the angle of the shot wasn't focused on the food at all. It was angled to capture my door in the background. And there, on my mail slot, completely legible in the photo, was my full name printed on the label I'd stuck there when I moved in 6 months ago. The wrong delivery was never a mistake. It was staged specifically to position him in a spot where he could photograph my door and harvest my personal information without it looking suspicious. He knew my apartment number from whatever surveillance he'd already done. The delivery gave him my full name to match with it. I reported everything to DoorDash and they suspended the driver account within an hour, but the rep I spoke to admitted the account was likely created with false credentials anyway. The police have all of this information now. I've removed the nameplate from my door and I'm looking at new apartments. I don't feel safe here anymore. Change your passwords immediately and enable 2-factor authentication on every food delivery app you have. If he got into one account, he might try others. The photo slipped under your door is what made my blood run cold. That means he came back after the delivery specifically to leave it. He wanted you to know you were being watched. Exactly this. It's a power move. He's not just watching, he's letting her know he's in control. OP, please take this to the police if you haven't already. The investigation revealed a disturbing pattern. The detective handling my case called back 3 days after I filed the formal report. My situation wasn't isolated. They'd identified a pattern spanning 4 months across my city, involving fake driver accounts on DoorDash, Uber Eats, and Grubhub, being created and used systematically to access secured apartment buildings and gather information on residents. The accounts were set up with stolen or fabricated credentials, kept active just long enough to complete a handful of legitimate deliveries to avoid suspicion, then abandoned before they could be traced back. My case matched the pattern exactly. Premeditated surveillance from street level days before contact. Staged wrong delivery specifically designed to position him where he could photograph my door and harvest my full name from the mail slot. Prolonged presence in the hallway to observe patterns and confirm I lived alone. The person who specifically targeted me hasn't been identified yet. The investigation remains ongoing. I've taken every precaution I can think of. Removed the nameplate from my door immediately. Installed a video doorbell that records to cloud storage. Changed security settings on all my delivery accounts to require phone verification before anyone gets buzzed into the building. I don't work by the window anymore. My curtains stay closed even during the day now. I'm actively looking at apartments in different neighborhoods because I can't shake the constant awareness that he knows exactly where I live and could come back whenever he wants. The worst part is understanding how a service designed for convenience became a weapon someone used to surveil me in what should have been the safest place I know. I'm posting this story publicly because people need to understand how easily these systems can be exploited by anyone willing to abuse them. If you use delivery apps, remove any identifying information from your door. Always verify orders before you buzz someone into your building. Install security cameras if you're able to. Your safety is worth far more than convenience. Did you check if your neighbor across the hall actually ordered something that night? The wrong delivery might have been planned to get you to open your door. On to the next one. I've stayed at the same hotel 87 times for work. The housekeeping patterns weren't random. She thought consistency was just good business practice. I'm a business consultant, and I live alone in an apartment. For the past 20 months, I've been traveling to Columbus every Tuesday for the same client engagement. I always stay at the Fairfield Inn, and I always request room 322, because I like consistency when I'm on the road that much. The routine became second nature. Tuesday morning flight, arrive by 10 a.m., meetings with David M. and the client team from 11 to 5, back to the hotel by 6 p.m., dinner alone, prep for the next day, Wednesday morning flight home. 87 weeks of the exact same pattern. About 3 weeks ago, I started noticing something odd. My laptop charger was always coiled in the exact same way when I got back from meetings. Not just neatly, the same loops, the same orientation on the desk, like someone had traced the same motion every single time. My toiletries in the bathroom were arranged in an identical configuration every single week. Shampoo bottle exactly 1 inch from the sink edge, toothbrush at a 45-degree angle. My shoes by the door were positioned at the exact same angle, toes pointing toward the bed. At first I thought maybe it was just one very particular housekeeper, someone with OCD or really strict training, but it was too precise, too deliberate, and it was only my things that were rearranged. The hotel's items, the notepad, the remote, the ice bucket, those stayed where I left them. Last Tuesday, I decided to examine the charger more closely. I picked it up and started uncoiling it completely, loop by loop. That's when I found them. 87 tiny rolled papers, thin as cigarette paper, hidden inside the coil. My hands were shaking as I spread them out across the bed. Each one documented what I wore that week. Week 87, you wore the gray suit today. Week 83, navy dress, black heels. Week 74, you left your blazer on the chair. Week 62, red blouse, you look tired. One note for every single week I'd stayed there. Someone had been documenting me. Someone had been watching her for nearly 2 years. The violation was complete. 87 weeks of observation, hidden in a charger she touched every single day. I spent 2 hours organizing them chronologically on the hotel bed. They were all there, week 1 through week 87. Each one documented what I wore, small observations about my routine. Week 45, you ordered room service instead of going out, chicken Caesar salad. Week 58, you left your laptop open, spreadsheet about Q3 projections. Week 71, you changed clothes twice, the blue dress looked better. Someone had been in my room, not just once, 87 times, close enough to see what I was wearing, what I was working on, what I ate. close enough to touch my charger, uncoil it, slide these tiny papers inside, and coil it back exactly the same way every single week. I called Emma, my coworker, at 11 p.m. I was still sitting on the floor, surrounded by the notes. She listened while I tried to explain without completely breaking down. "Who has access to your room?" she asked. "Housekeeping? Front desk staff? Maintenance, I guess? Management?" I started going through my memory of every Tuesday. The meetings with David M. and the client team were always professional, always the same conference room, always focused on procurement strategy and logistics. Nothing had ever felt off. David M. was polite, maybe a little reserved, but perfectly normal. The client team rotated through different people, but nobody stood out as suspicious. But someone had been watching me closely enough to document everything. The notes weren't just about clothes, they tracked my habits. When I ordered in versus went out, when I worked late, when I changed outfits. This person knew my routine better than I did. The identical rearrangement patterns weren't housekeeping standards. They were a signature, a way of touching my things, my space, and leaving everything exactly the same so I wouldn't notice. I decided to set up tests for next Tuesday. A strand of hair across the door frame. Items positioned in specific ways I could measure. If someone entered, I would know. She had 1 week to prepare. 1 week before she walked back into room 322. The test would prove what she already feared. I reported everything to hotel management on Tuesday. I brought all 87 notes with me in a folder. The general manager looked at them for maybe 30 seconds and told me housekeeping follows standard protocols and they would look into it. He seemed more annoyed than concerned, like I was wasting his time. My test confirmed what I already knew. I put the Do Not Disturb sign up. I left a hair across the door frame, positioned items in specific measurements. When I came back from meetings, the hair was broken. My laptop was moved exactly 3 inches to the left. My shoes were repositioned at that same precise angle. Someone had entered even when I explicitly hung the sign. This person had been in my space 87 times. While I was sleeping, while I was showering, while I was changing clothes. The violation felt total, suffocating. The Tuesday meetings with David M. and the client team felt surreal. I sat across the conference table watching everyone, looking for any sign of unusual behavior, anything off. David M. was the same as always, polite, focused on procurement logistics, taking notes on his laptop. Nothing unusual. The client team rotated through different people, but nobody stood out. I ordered a hidden camera online and had it shipped overnight to my apartment. Next Tuesday, I would set it up in room 322 before I left for meetings. I kept thinking about how normal everything seemed. My professional setting, the people I trusted, the routine I relied on. But someone in that ecosystem had been violating me for 20 months, and I had no idea who. As someone who travels for work constantly, this is my worst nightmare. I'm going to start photographing my room before and after housekeeping now. I work in consulting too, and I'm shaking reading this. We trust these client contacts, work alongside them, never thinking they could be doing something like this. Please update us when you can. Check your laptop and phone for spyware. If he had physical access to your devices that frequently, he could have installed monitoring software. Take them to a professional. I did exactly this the same day I found the notes. Forensics team found remote access software installed on my laptop from 14 months ago. He'd been watching me work, reading my emails, everything. That's how he knew what I wore each day. He was monitoring my calendar where I logged outfits for client meetings. I feel sick. The police made them pull the footage. I reviewed the security footage and found out who it was. Hotel security refused to cooperate until the police got involved. Once they threatened to subpoena the hallway camera recordings, the general manager finally pulled the footage from the past 8 weeks. It was David M., my client contact. The procurement manager I'd been meeting with professionally every Tuesday for 20 months. The footage showed him entering my room during our lunch breaks. I always left the hotel to grab food at the same cafe down the street, a routine he knew perfectly well because he'd seen me do it 87 times. While I was gone, he would go to room 322. He had keycard access. The timestamps matched exactly. The betrayal is what cuts the deepest. This was the man I sat across from in conference rooms discussing procurement strategies and logistics. The man who took notes on his laptop while I presented quarterly projections. The man who shook my hand at the end of every meeting and thanked me for my time. He'd been acting completely normal while touching my belongings, uncoiling my laptop charger, sliding those tiny notes inside, rearranging my things in that identical pattern. He'd been violating my private space for nearly 2 years, and then sitting across the table from me like nothing was wrong. The police arrested him yesterday. I've been advised not to say more until the investigation is complete, but I needed to update you all. I was working alongside my stalker this entire time. Former hotel manager here. There is absolutely no legitimate reason for the same items to be arranged identically each week by rotating staff. Someone was doing this deliberately. Get police involved ASAP. This is absolutely horrifying. Please tell me you reported this to your company and the police, not just hotel management. This is criminal stalking with evidence. Seriously, this goes way beyond hotel security. This man had your schedule, your room number, and physical access for nearly 2 years. There needs to be criminal charges and a restraining order at minimum. The investigation revealed the full extent of his obsession. The police investigation uncovered everything. David M. had been paying the night front desk clerk $100 every single week for 20 months to ensure I was always assigned room 322 and to provide duplicate key cards. The clerk confessed immediately when questioned and said David M. told him it was a surprise for his girlfriend. I was never his girlfriend. I barely knew him outside of work meetings. When they searched his devices, they found over 2,000 photos of my belongings. Detailed photos of my laptop screen, my toiletries arranged in that precise configuration, my clothes hanging in the closet, my shoes positioned by the door. Spreadsheets tracking my habits and routines with entries for what time I left for meetings, what I ordered for dinner, when I went to bed, what I wore each week. Calendar entries documenting every single one of my 87 visits with detailed notes about my behavior and mood. The most disturbing part was the fake corporate reviews. He'd been posting them on travel forums and review sites for months, subtly recommending the Fairfield Inn in Columbus to anyone searching for business accommodations in the area. He'd even sent anonymous emails to my company's travel coordinator, suggesting it as a preferred vendor. He orchestrated the entire routine. He wanted to make sure I kept coming back to room 322 every Tuesday for as long as possible. He's been charged with stalking, unlawful surveillance, and criminal trespassing. The prosecutor told me there's more than enough evidence for conviction. I keep thinking about every interaction we had. Every meeting where he sat across from me taking notes on his laptop while I presented quarterly reports. Every polite handshake at the end of the day. Every casual conversation about procurement strategies. Every Tuesday for 20 months, I was sitting across from someone who was living a completely separate reality, where I was the center of an obsession I never knew existed. Someone I saw as just a professional contact had constructed an entire hidden world around me. The fact that he was leaving notes is beyond disturbing. He wanted you to eventually find them. This was going to escalate. I'm so glad you caught it when you did. And that's the last story for today.